Still the anger of the Lord did not turn away, and his hand was still stretched out over Egypt. And the Lord sent all kinds of beasts of the field into Egypt, and they came and destroyed all Egypt, man and beast, and trees and all things that were in Egypt. And the Lord sent fiery serpents, scorpions, mice, weasels, toads, together with others creeping in dust, flies, hornets, fleas, bugs, and gnats, each swarm according to its kind. And all reptiles and winged animals according to their kind came to Egypt, and upset the Egyptians greatly. The fleas and flies came into the eyes and ears of the Egyptians. The hornet came on them and drove them away, and they removed from it into their inner rooms, and it pursued them. When the Egyptians hid themselves on account of the swarm of animals, they locked their doors after them, and God ordered the Sulanith which was in the sea to come up and go into Egypt. She had long arms, 10 cubits in length, and of the cubit of a man. And she went on the roofs and uncovered the raftering and flooring, and cut them, and stretched forth her arm into the house, and removed the lock and the bolt, and opened the houses of Egypt. Afterward came the swarm of animals into the houses of Egypt, and the swarm of animals destroyed the Egyptians and upset them greatly. Still the anger of the Lord did not turn away from the Egyptians, and his hand was yet stretched forth against them. God sent the pestilence, and the pestilence pervaded Egypt, in the horses and asses and in the camels, in herds of oxen and sheep and in man. When the Egyptians rose up early in the morning to take their cattle to pasture, they found all their cattle dead. There remained of the cattle of the Egyptians only 1 in 10, and of the cattle belonging to Israel and Goshen not one died. And God sent a burning inflammation in the flesh of the Egyptians, which burst their skins. It became a severe itch in all the Egyptians, from the soles of their feet to the crowns of their heads. And many boils were in their flesh, that their flesh wasted away until they became rotten and putrid. Still the anger of the Lord did not turn away, and his hand was still stretched out over all of Egypt. And the Lord sent a very heavy hail, which struck their vines and broke their fruit trees and dried them up, that they fell on them. Also every green herb became dry and perished, for a mingling fire descended with the hail. Therefore the hail and the fire consumed all things. Also men and beasts that were found abroad perished of the flames of fire and of the hail, and all the young lions were exhausted. And the Lord sent and brought numerous locusts into Egypt, the Chazal, Salem, Cargil, and Cagil, locusts each of its kind, which devoured all that the hail had left remaining. Then the Egyptians rejoiced at the locusts, because although they consumed the produce of the field, and they had caught them in abundance and salted them for food. And the Lord turned a mighty wind of the sea, which took away all the locusts, even those that were salted, and thrust them into the Red Sea. Not one locust remained within the boundaries of Egypt. God sent darkness on Egypt, that the whole land of Egypt and Pathros became dark for 3 days, so that a man could not see his hand when he lifted it to his mouth. At that time many of the people of Israel died, who had rebelled against the Lord, and who had not listened to Moses and Aaron, and believed not in them that God had sent them, and who had said, "We will not go forth from Egypt, because we will perish with hunger in a desolate wilderness." They were those who would not listen to the voice of Moses. The Lord plagued them in the 3 days of darkness, and the Israelites buried them in those days without the Egyptians knowing of them or rejoicing over them. The darkness was very great in Egypt for 3 days, and any person who was standing when the darkness came remained standing in his place. He that was sitting remained sitting, and he that was lying continued lying in the same state. He that was walking remained sitting on the ground in the same spot. And this thing happened to all the Egyptians until the darkness had passed away. The days of darkness passed away, and the Lord sent Moses and Aaron to the children of Israel, saying, Celebrate your feast and make your Passover. For behold, I come in the middle of the night. Among all the Egyptians, I will strike all their firstborn, from the firstborn of a man to the firstborn of a beast. And when I see your Passover, I will pass over you. And the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. Thus did they in that night. It came to pass in the middle of the night that the Lord went forth in the midst of Egypt, and struck all the firstborn of the Egyptians, from the firstborn of man to the firstborn of beast. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry throughout Egypt in that night, for there was not a house in which there was not a corpse. Also the likeness of the firstborn of Egypt, which were carved in the walls at their houses, were destroyed and fell to the ground. Even the bones of their firstborn, who had died before this, and whom they had buried in their houses, were raked up by the dogs of Egypt on that night, and dragged before the Egyptians, and cast before them. And the Egyptians saw this evil which had suddenly come on them, and all the Egyptians cried out with a loud voice, and all the families of Egypt wept on that night, each man for his son, and each man for his daughter, being the firstborn, and the tumult of Egypt was heard at a distance on that night. But Thea, the daughter of Pharaoh, went forth with the king on that night to seek Moses and Aaron in their houses. They found them in their houses eating and drinking and rejoicing with all of Israel. But Thea said to Moses, Is this the reward for the good which I have done to you, who have reared you and made you grow and prosper, and you have brought this evil on me and my father's house? And Moses said to her, Certainly 10 plagues did the Lord bring on Egypt. Did any evil accrue to you from any of them? Did one of them affect you? And she said, No.